welcome to North Point Online. We're so glad that you're here with us today, and I just want to give you a quick snapshot of what we're all about. If you just hopped on the stream and you don't know what's going on, we're just a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus. So whatever age, whatever stage you're in, we hope that today is helpful for you. And if we haven't met yet, my name is John. I'll help out as our Republic campus pastor. And if that campus seems new to you, if you're like, wow, I didn't even know we had a Republic campus, well, then you might have missed last week as we talked about the launch of our Republic campus on 9/19, as you can see. And so we talked about, hey, what does that look like, the why of that campus, how you can get involved and play a part. And if you're looking for any of that information, you can hop on northpointchurch.tv/Republic, and you can check all that information out. But couple things I want you to know about today. One is our connection card. So you might see it rolling through the stream that you can press on that link right there, but we've got an online connection card. This is our opportunity to pray with you, to partner with you, to walk with you through a next step in response to the message. And so seriously, if you haven't filled out that connection card before, make today the day. I know that sometimes online it's a little bit harder to find connection or maybe you feel a little bit more secluded. Fill out that connection card. We love to partner with you. We love to talk with you, mention you. But I see a couple people hopping in on the stream, and I just want to say hi, David and Linda and Justin, and it's good to see you guys. But I also want to talk about another way that you can get involved here at North Point, and that's through generosity. Last week we had baptisms, and every baptism represents a story, and there were some amazing, crazy stories of people who are changing their lives and turning them around and just striving to look more and more like Jesus, and your generosity is making that happen. And so I just want to take a moment and talk to you before we're about to get back into worship and worship together. So wherever you're at, you can stand. You can sing, but read the lyrics, let's engage, and let's walk through this together as we worship. And so we're excited to do that, and we can do that right now. So let's go for it.
There is no shadow that has ever overcome your life. There is no ever stand against your might. You've always been with us. Every battle you've already won. You've already won. There is no weapon that has ever left shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No, there's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found. There's a 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of We're so thankful for how you recklessly pursued us, God. You're chosen and set, not by me. Thank you for every person in this room. Thank you that you're pursuing and loving me. Thank you so much. You guys can go ahead and take your seats. Thank you so much for worshiping with us today. We're so glad you're here. Now's a great time to pull out your phone, pull up the North Point app, and follow along with the message notes. Thank you. Let's go for it.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Well, well, good. I love that. Yeah, I'm excited to hear that 4 weeks in a row. Good morning, North Point. It is good to be with you. My name is Chris Torres, and I get to help out as one of the campus pastors and do a little bit of teaching too. And I want to take just a second to welcome in all of our other campuses. So if you would, help me out. Can we say what's up to Nixa campus? Let's say what's up. You ready? 1, 2, 3. What's up, Nixa? Hey, and then real quick, can we put our hands together for some of my favorite people at the Dream Center? We love you guys. And then online, hey, we are so honored that you took some time to tune in with us and join us, and we're glad you're here. And I'm excited about the message today because we're going to talk about some things over the next few weeks that as we begin to follow Jesus, that will help to optimize our life if we fight against these things, and we need to. There are some things that we have to fight against. There are some things that we've got to take a stand against in our lives as we follow Jesus, and I'm so excited about today because I want to talk about fighting against offense. because offense doesn't optimize or give us the best life possible. And it's funny for me to say that because the other day I was even wondering like, am I an offended person? And I was like, nah, like surely not, like surely not. So I took a piece of paper because I wanted to prove that I wasn't an offended person. And I made a list. I started writing stuff out. Turns out the list was very long. So here's what I concluded. I'm not an offensive person or an offended person. I just hang around a lot of offensive people. That's why I have such a long list. But I want to share a couple of those things with you on there that, you know, I was kind of shocked by, but I knew it. I just never put words to it. A couple of things I wrote on the list, the things that offend me. Number one is when people don't text me back. You ever get that? Like, especially when they leave the read message on, and like I can see it. Like, at least have the courtesy and lie to me. Like, turn the notification off so I wonder, and I can believe the best. Another thing I wrote was, I get offended at Taco Bell. Whenever they put mild sauce, when I specifically ask for Diablo sauce. That is so annoying to me. Which I think is more of the principle, because I'm not even sure why that would bother me so much, because they taste exactly the same. I get offended with long lines. I get offended, and maybe you know people like this, or people that get offended when their friends get offended. You ever see that? Like, they're like, I'm so mad. I'm so stressed out. You had such a stressful day. I'm offended for you. I'm gonna take the day off of work. I get offended with my 2-year-old because he tells me no. I get offended with my 4-year-old because he tells me no. I get offended with my wife because she tells me no. I get offended when people criticize me. Let's be real. There is no such thing as constructive criticism. You just hate me. That's all it is. I get offended when people find me offensive. I'm like, excuse you? But what really gets me is I get offended when people mess with my kids, man. My son was 2, he's 4 now, but 2 years ago, we were in Tulsa at this really cool like playground thing, and he was trying to go up this thing on the playground, like he was trying to go up this little tunnel thing, and there was this gentleman there, and he was stopping him from going up. And I'm watching, and I'm like, huh? Like, in 1 second, I promise you, I forgot 100% of my morning's devotional. Gone. I forgot I was a pastor. And I get up, and I'm like, hold my drink, babe. And I come walking over, and as I'm walking over, I can hear the gentleman's mom call his name. His name was Trevor. He was 6. And I get to the playground. You got to pick battles you can win. I get to the playground, and there's a little hole where Trevor was blocking my son, and I walked over, and I started talking to him like I was like Al Pacino in The Godfather. Like, I'm calm. I'm totally calm. But there's a lot of power in what I'm saying. So I'm like, hey, Trevor. And he looks, he goes, yeah. And I'm like, hey, why don't you see that kid down there that you're not letting up? Why don't you go ahead and invite him on up? In fact, why don't you play with him the rest of the day? Make him feel very special. Can you do that for me, Trevor? I'm trusting you're not gonna let me down with this. He's 6. He's like, yeah, whatever, dude. And I turn around like I won the battle, and I look back like thinking my wife's gonna be so proud of the father that I am and the husband that I am. And she's like, what are you thinking? What are you gonna do? The question was, what was I gonna do? I hadn't processed any of it. I got offended and I just responded. And with 99% of the time, that's what happens when we get offended. We just respond. No thought as to what it's gonna do to us. And that's why I'm telling you, it doesn't lead to the life that God wants for you. In fact, I wrote it this way in your notes. I wrote that offense doesn't optimize life, it actually oppresses it. Now, by definition, oppression is prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or control. And here's the thing. It doesn't mean that it's control. When I talk about this coming from offense, it's not from the offender. I'm saying this is what the offense does to us. It's unjust treatment to us. It takes control of us because it hurts. In fact, I did a little research on it, on the feeling of offense, and it's actually tied to the so-called self-conscious emotions, things like pride and guilt and shame and humiliation, all of them. When it's like a strike to a person's image or to their self-image and how they see themselves, and it hurts. And we get all kinds of different things coming out of it. We get angry, we get vengeful, we get hurt, we get insecure. And we all know the feeling. You guys know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. We know what it's felt like when our bosses joked or made fun of a proposal or an idea that we had. Or we had a friend that told us the truth about our haircut. Or we had our in-laws give us some wonderful parenting advice as they commented on ours. Or we had a teacher give us a C when we worked really hard for that grade, which has never bothered me. I always considered C to mean congratulations, you passed. But what happens is it gets in and it takes control of us. And that's counteractive and counterproductive to the life Jesus wants us to live. In fact, Paul said this in Galatians 2:20. He said this, he said, my old self, it's been crucified with Christ. And it's not I that lives, but it's Christ that lives in me. I can't think of a greater test to this verse than being offended. I can't think of a greater test to this verse than being offended. Because if it's not I, but Christ who lives in me, Christ lived very differently than I do. In fact, we built our religion and our faith on the back of a guy who literally let go of every single offense. Every single one. And I can't even walk away from a 6-year-old at a park. So what do we do? Well, I came up with this. I figured this out. The best defense for an offense is asking myself questions. Can I ask myself questions to kind of realign myself when I get upset? Just 4 of them. I was kind of looking through scripture and I wrote them in the can I sense. Can I do this? Can I do this? And I want us to look at some of these and see if applying these can't help our lives. Here's the first one I wrote. Can I reframe my understanding? Can I reframe my understanding of what's happening? Better question to ask could be this: can I be wrong? Is that possible? And if you're like, no, never. Ask yourself this question: have I ever been wrong? I remember when I was going to Bible school, I was living in Los Angeles, and I had to submit a video for my very first preaching class at the end of the semester of me preaching a 35-minute message. And like the whole class, they would critique it or whatnot. Well, I submit it for the final. And I spent a lot of time on it too. I read all the commentaries. I just dove all in. I'm like, man, I want to get a really good grade. I spent a lot of time re-recording it and stuff. I submit it. Weeks go by, another week goes by, nothing. And then I get this comment on my dashboard on my computer, and it is from the professor. And here's what he said. He said, I'm not sure what point you were trying to make by submitting this. But it's the end of the year and I'm really tired and I needed a good laugh. Thanks. Oh. Dude, Can you talk about being offended? I was like, this dude doesn't even know who I am. Like, I've been coming to church for like maybe a year. I'm gonna go introduce myself. And I'm like going crazy. I'm like walking around my room, like losing my mind. Like, my roommate's talking, but I can't even hear it. It's just like I'm in this like weird Twilight Zone feeling, like I'm losing control. I'm so angry. I'm like typing in this email, and then I'll delete it all, and then I'll retype it, and then I'm like, well, come on, like I gotta get like every word precise because I really want to hurt his feelings when I respond. And then my roommate goes over to the computer, and he's like, did you even check your grade? And I was like, no. He's like, he gave you an A. And I'm like, huh? You're kidding. Then all of a sudden I wasn't as offended. I was still offended, but I'm like, at least I passed. And that's better than a C. He gave me an A. So I go back, check the submission, and download what I submitted. Turns out I sent the wrong video. I sent a video, not of me preaching, but of me and my roommate in Hawaiian shirts, dancing to the hit song, Love You Like a Love Song, Baby. How in the world I submitted that, I have no idea. Like, and our hips were going to the drum beat, like it was dun, 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 dun. I don't know how that happened. I got no idea. But what's funny was I was so offended and I was so mad at him. I never ever even thought to think or check, could I be wrong? Could I have made a mistake? And he was even still gracious enough to give me an A. Wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, dog, thanks. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus, he's making his way to Jerusalem, and he's been doing a lot of miracles, a lot of signs, showing and teaching people who he is along the way. And he leaves Capernaum, and he arrives at his hometown, where people there are less amazed, still pretty curious as to how he's doing all these miracles and stuff like that. But they begin to ask a lot of questions about him. They're like, isn't that Jesus? Like, wasn't his dad a carpenter? I'm pretty sure that was him. Like, wasn't his mom, like, his mother's Mary. She used to bring oranges to our soccer game. That can't, but here's what happens. Watch this. They get so offended by this. Look, it says this in 57, verse 57, 58. It says, and they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them that a prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home. And he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. Now watch this. Pull this verse back up for me. I noticed this when I was reading it. It says, and they took offense. But Jesus, as he points out that he didn't do any miracles, here's why. Go to the last verse, and let me show you this. As he points it out, he says, because of their lack of faith. When they took offense, they lacked in faith. In fact, I wrote it in your notes this way. Where offense grows, faith shrinks. Where faith is little, you're gonna find some giant offenses. Wherever offense grows, faith shrinks. They didn't have the ability to see Jesus for who he was because they were so caught up in what they were believing and what they were expecting. What they thought would be true. Jesus wasn't gonna come through a situation like that. Jesus was gonna come from a kingdom. He wasn't gonna show up from the kid down the street. It wasn't the picture that they thought. But here's the problem. Their faith was strong, it was just in the wrong thing. They had a lot of faith as Jewish people, just what they had been taught turned out to be wrong. Is that possible? when we get offended that we're wrong? Is it possible even that we miss Jesus in a situation because we get so offended that we even miss a miracle that could take place? Wherever offense grows, faith shrinks. Proverbs 12:15 says, the way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but the wise man, they listen. A wise person listens. They take that crooked picture and they see, is there any way for me to reframe this thing? Second thing is this, recognize the cost. Can I recognize the cost? See, I recognize cost in every other avenue of my life. Nowhere do I not consider the cost. I recognize when I go on vacation that I'm gonna spend a lot of money. In fact, I know for sure already. I know that if I go to Disneyland, Disney World, Las Vegas, or I visit the ER, I'm gonna spend a lot of money. I know it. So I keep a lot of super glue at home for the fourth one. But it's expensive. And I recognize that I'm not just paying to get to Disney World, I recognize what it's gonna cost me when I'm there too. That I'll probably end up making some big life decisions when I'm there. Like, do I really want these Mickey ears or pay my electric bill? But I recognize the cost, and that's biblical. In fact, the Bible says that a wise man does this before he builds anything. He says he recognizes the cost so that he doesn't get along down the road and realize that he doesn't have the ability to finish this thing out. When it comes to being offended, it's probably a good idea to recognize that on the front end of things, of just what we're gonna have to pay to live an offended life. Think about this for just a second. I'll just give you a couple of them. Some of the things that we're gonna lose, that it's gonna cost us. It'll cost us time. Think about this. It's 3:30 in the afternoon, you're getting ready to leave work, and you're on social media and you're scrolling. You see that comment from that camp, those people, that party, those in-laws, that family member, and you're just like, seriously. For the next 30 minutes, you watch the conversation, because there's already like 459 comments on it, and like you're just trolling and just stirring up the coals of anger, and you're like, and then you're like, I can't take it. And so you go and you just start responding like crazy, like you're like, I mean, you're sending it off to like your spouse or a friend to like edit it and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And then you come back and then you repost it, and then you begin to drive home. And on the way home, you hear a ding. Ooh, somebody responded. So you open it up and you look at it, and now they've come with facts. And now you're driving and you have to check the facts, because you're like, that's not right. So I've got to go and not only check their facts, but I've also got to come with my facts. So I'm doing an entire research report on Kansas Expressway, looking to respond to this person. And then I'm like doing this, which, by the way, I don't know how one can be a fact on one side and then there'd be another fact on the other side. Something's missing there. And then we send it, boom. And we get home and we're so proud of our response. Everybody's at the dinner table, we're getting ready to sit down and eat, and then you look at the response and they deleted it. How could they? It was that good. It was that good that they deleted it, but it's that good that I remembered it. So now I'm gonna go rewrite this thing. I'm gonna rewrite it, and I type it out, and then you type it out, and then you send it, and now the whole dinner table is dominated by your brilliance of your post, because all you're doing is sharing it with everybody. And then you get another response, and now it's their friends who've chimed in. Now it's like a war. You're like, all right, I'm gonna take on all 8 of you. Hold my drink, babe. Here I go. 5.5 hours later, nobody's changed their mind. You've proven nothing to no one. What have you lost? You lost time with family. You lost time and attention with kids, with a spouse, with a friend, whatever it is. you lost it. Do we recognize how much it'll cost us? Not only that, but when it gets in our heads and it starts to dominate our time, eventually it's going to get in our heart and it's going to begin to cost us relationships. James teaches this, that when we're offended long enough, that it will grow into bitterness. Bitterness, there's no other negative emotion like this in Scripture. Anger, unforgiveness, all of them. None of them have roots. But Hebrews 12:15 talks about the root of bitterness. And the danger with roots, just like any other root, is that we think that it'll happen out here and it won't impact us over here. We think that if we can just be offended with this thing over here, this situation, these people, this party, this camp, that it's not going to find its way into my marriage. Or that if I can be offended with that same situation, then it's not going to find its way into my work. See, a root, what it does is it's not ever going to go through a foundation. It's not strong enough. It's going to look for tiny little holes, whether it's a crack in a foundation that's already there, or it's like a little tiny hole where water has dripped through in a pipe, and then it gets in and it begins to just tear things apart. Listen, the enemy, he doesn't have to ruin your life. All he has to do is plant a little seed of offense and we'll ruin it ourselves. Because we'll let that root grow, and pretty soon it's gonna start popping up everywhere in our lives. And I don't know if you've ever been around a person that was like super, super bitter or angry or mad. Maybe you've been raised by one, or you're related to one, or you're raising one. But here's what I know is that they don't become this way overnight. They became this way because they held on to little offenses here and there, and that's how the enemy wins. He gets in these little things. He knows we're smart enough that he can't just come up and divide us. He's got to take little tiny offenses and get between us. The enemy wants to divide. He wants to divide your marriage. He wants to divide you from your kids as a parent. He wants to divide this country. He wants to divide the church. And he can do that through small, tiny, little offenses, because he knows it'll grow. And eventually, if we allow that seed, that bitterness, to live long enough, we're gonna end up alone, because nobody's gonna stick around. Trust me when I tell you this. The cost is too high to be offended. So it's good to recognize that beforehand. Can I reframe my understanding, and can I recognize the cost? Number 3 is this: can I respond with kindness? Listen, responding kindly to somebody doesn't mean that you're wrong or that they're right. It just means you're an adult. That's all it means. The Bible uses this word meek, to describe Jesus. And the word meek means power that's like under control. And it's focused in a very productive manner, in a way. And so when you translate the word in Greek to meekness, it can also refer to a horse that's been broken. Meaning the horse still has all the power that it's ever had. It's just used in a productive way to accomplish a purpose. Jesus, throughout his life, never lacked any of his divine power. He had it 100% the whole time. But he used it in a way that was productive to accomplish his Father's purpose. He was offended. He was spit on. He was beaten. He was mocked. He was dragged up a hill. He was nailed to a tree. He was very offended. And you know what he said? He said, "Father, please forgive him." Jesus was in control the entire time. Proverbs 19:11 says this, says, "Good sense," or good insight, good understanding, makes one slow to anger, and it's to his glory to overlook an offense. Notice the H there isn't capitalized. He's not talking about it's to God's glory, it's to our own glory, for us to overlook offense. It makes us look better to overlook offense. My dad used to tell me something when I was a kid. He would always tell me, son, if you're gonna do anything worth value, do it slow. Or if it was really important, he'd say, do it slow. When he was teaching me how to drive, he'd be like, put your foot on the gas, do it slow. I drove into the garage. About cutting something, working on something, he'd say, do it slow, do it slow. Why? Because when you do things slow, you have more control. In fact, I put it this way, and when you do things slow and the control you have, it equals power. You can have just as much power in a productive way when you respond kindly. In fact, I would even argue that if your goal is overall change or influence, you're probably gonna have more power and influence responding kindly. But we don't win anything when we just explode and spew emotions everywhere. We end up wasting a lot of time. The last thing is this, can I reinforce my faith? Can I reinforce my faith? You know, earlier I said that wherever offense grows, faith shrinks. I believe this 100%, the opposite to be true, that wherever faith grows, offense will shrink. I believe that the more I look at Jesus, the less offended I'm gonna be at somebody's post. I believe that 100%. I believe the more I watch how Jesus responded, the easier it becomes for me to respond. I can reinforce my faith through these situations. In fact, opposition is how the church has thrived for 2,000 years. Can I reinforce my faith? To do that, we got to think like Jesus. So I'm going to close by reading you this passage, literally how Jesus thought of himself. It's found in Philippians 2, 5 through 11. And it says this. It says, think of yourselves in the way that Christ Jesus thought of himself. He had equal status with God, but didn't think so much of himself that he had to cling to his own advantages of that status no matter what. Actually, not at all. He could reframe his understanding. And when the time came, he set aside his privileges of deity and took the status of a slave, became human. Having become human, he stayed human. It was an incredibly humbling process. He didn't claim his special privileges. Why? Because he recognized what it would cost him. He knew the end goal and he stayed focused. Instead, here's what he did. He lived a selfless, obedient life, never allowing his offenses to cause him to respond out of anger, and then he died an obedient death. He wasn't obedient to death, he was being obedient to his Father, and that cost him death. And the worst kind of death, that of a crucifixion. But watch this, because of his obedience, God lifts him up on high and honored him far above anyone or anything ever, so that all created things in heaven and on earth, even those long ago, dead and buried, will bow and worship before Jesus Christ and call out in praise that he is the master of all, to the glorious honor of the Father. Listen, Jesus knew those people that were trying to take blows at him, that were throwing rocks at him, that were spitting, that were making fun of him. He knew someday, if I just stay focused on the Father, if I am able to spend all of my effort doing the Father's purposes, guess what the Father's gonna do for me? He's gonna lift me up. If I can let go of this offense, God's gonna lift me on high. And here's what we need to do in moments of extreme offense. We gotta be able to look back and process this and look at how Jesus lived and say, I can't do this without you, Jesus. You did it. Help me to do it. Help me to keep my eyes, my heart, my emotions in control, and focused on you. Help me not to jump into oppression. Help me to allow you to optimize and make the very best of my life. Letting go of oppression is the exact same as letting go of offense. It hurts you and it weighs you down, but Jesus has something better for you. And I want you to think of this. What would it look like? What would your life look like if we just, this week, if we just took these 4 questions? What would your marriage look like? If I started asking myself these questions before I respond because I can't find the remote control. What would it look like? What would it look like as a parent? What would it look like on your social media? How much time would you get back? What would it look like if we just asked these 4 questions? Can I reframe? Can I learn anything? Could I be wrong? Can I recognize how much this is going to cost me? Can I respond kindly? And can I allow this situation here, this thing right here, to do something completely opposite and reinforce my faith in Jesus? What an opportunity we have to grow when we get offended. And Jesus wants to do that. He wants to optimize your life and make the best of it. Let me pray. God, thank you so much for the ultimate example of your son who was hated, offended, but he chose to let go of all of it. He never lost sight of your purpose. And Jesus, I pray that you would help us to do the same. God, help us to ask these questions, to consider, and to ask the questions, can I reframe my understanding? Can I learn anything from this situation, God? Can I be wrong? Is this worth the cost? God, every situation, every offense, there's lots of them in here, and everyone watching, God, I pray that whatever that is, that would be used to your glory. God, that they would be able to reinforce their faith in you this week through that situation. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, hey, I want to take just a second and tell you about a story of a guy named Tony. Tony, he's my friend, and I've been able to share it here, but I want to share it globally for everyone to hear. He came to the church a couple of months ago, and for the very first time, which is very rare, just in general. But he was struggling, not just our church, but the church. Like, he had been in one other time, but this was it. Like, he was coming in, and he was struggling with anger. And he comes in, he sits in here, and he encounters God in a way, and he says, you know what? I'm going to start following Jesus. And he makes that decision. A couple of weeks later, he then makes a decision to follow Jesus into the tank. A couple of weeks, or actually immediately after that, as he got out of the tank, he told me, he said, you know what? I'm going to start serving. And then he started serving. And now he's on our prep team on Wednesday nights. He shows up here and runs cameras. He helps out with safety. Tony is here all of the time. And Tony, yeah, that's awesome. And Tony has dived all in. And here's what I want you to know. I want you to know this. He came to me the other week. You know what he told me? He said, Chris, I love North Point because of the people that go to North Point and how they've made me feel like this is my family. That is awesome. And listen, his journey here started with people that made him feel welcome, and then his step to check a card. It led to his decision to get baptized, helped him down the road of serving. So here's what I want us to do. As I invite the ushers forward, I want us to take just a second and grab that connection card on your seat. A next step could look like this. It could just mean writing down a prayer. You could literally just write down a way that we can pray for you and for your family. Could be to serve, could be to get baptized, could be to start a relationship with Jesus. And here's what we want to do. If you make that decision, we want to celebrate with you, but also help to get you connected. And you can do that by checking the box. This is also a time to begin investing financially if you haven't yet. And here's why. Or even a one-time gift. Here's why. Because on 9/19, we are starting a campus in Republic. Come on. Come on. That's exciting. And here's why I'm excited about that. Because it puts another opportunity to hear another Tony story where somebody can come in, encounter Jesus, and begin to have their life radically transformed and plug into the church and meet some cool friends along the way. That's why I'm excited. But we also recognize the cost. We also realize that that's gonna take 100,000 over and above what we normally do. And I know that there's some of you in here that you could easily do that. Like that's not a problem. You could pay some big chunks of that. But here's what I want. I want for all of us that call North Point home, that we believe in North Point. We believe in the vision. We believe Republic can use a safe place. And we want to see another story like Tony's that we would all be able to contribute to. So if you brought cash or check, you can throw that in and note on there, Republic. And if you're watching online, just click the buttons, follow along. And if you're a first-time guest, no pressure, okay? Don't feel that at all. We're just glad that you're here. We just want, we hope that we've given back to you. And if you'll let us know that you're here, we'll go and make a donation to a local charity in your honor. So just by coming, you've already made a difference. So I'm gonna go ahead and let the ushers, they're gonna pass the buckets at all of our locations. And I wanna fill you in tonight at 5:30 at the Republic Rec Center. We are going to have our first launch and campus meeting there. So we would love for you to come out and check it out. We've got childcare, we've got food. You're gonna get to hear from the campus pastor and from Jeremy. And really, you'll just get to hear about what's going on. And listen, it does not mean that you have to leave. Now, if you live in Republic, I would hope we would want to be a part of that, but it doesn't mean you have to commit to going to another campus or anything like that. But it's asking the question, as a North Pointer, how can I help push this vision forward? What can I do? And you're just listening to the ideas. And we're gonna make it really, really fun. I'm gonna play dodgeball since I missed the one back there today with your children. So just come and hang out. We would absolutely love it. But we also got a canvassing day coming up on September 4th. So where all of us can go and we can just hit the community and meet people and we can launch this campus strong. I want to see God do something big in Republic, don't you? You missed it. I want to see God do something big in Republic, don't you? Come on, come on. Thanks, Dream Center. Thanks, Nixa. Thanks, guys. Hey, would you stand with me? Hey, we love you. Thank you so much for taking time to come and hang out with us at North Point. We hope you have a great week. We'll see you tonight or see you next week. Take care.